A beautiful stranger fixes his tie and whispers, "Don't get in the car," turning a glamorous night into a deadly warning. He realizes too late that the sleek black car waiting for him is a trap, and the woman who touched his collar might be the only one trying to save his life. When I tell people about the woman in the red dress, they think I'm exaggerating. But I remember every second of that night, right down to how my borrowed, Keanu Reeves, tie refused to sit straight on my collar. I was never supposed to be the main character of anything. I was the guy behind the scenes, ride-share driver by day, hotel valet by night, and on weekends a background extra in low-budget action movies. The only reason I got invited to the Blackstone Hotel's charity gala was because my manager needed someone tall who looks kind of like Keanu to stand by the cars and make the rich people feel safe. That was literally how he said it. So there I was, in a slightly too tight black suit, trying to look like I belonged among million-dollar smiles and borrowed diamonds. Inside the lobby, the world smelled like money and perfume. Crystal lights dripped from the ceiling, a string quartet played a song I pretended to recognize, and influencers posed in front of walls of fake roses. Every time a guest handed me their keys, they made the same joke, "You know who you look like?" And I'd smile, bow a little too dramatically, and say, "Let me guess, Keanu Reeves' tired cousin?" It made them laugh. I liked making people feel at ease, even if it meant turning myself into a walking punchline. The truth was, I needed that shift. My sister's medical bills were stacked on our kitchen table back home, and the car I drove for work had more warning lights than a Christmas tree. Humility stops being a choice when life keeps knocking you down. It just becomes the way you survive. So I parked cars, opened doors, and told myself that honest work, no matter how small, still mattered. That night, I promised myself I'd get through the 12 hours, collect my overtime pay, and maybe, just maybe, we'd finally be able to fix the leaking roof. I first noticed her because she didn't fit the pattern. While everyone else floated through the entrance like they owned the world, she hesitated at the curb, one hand gripping a small silver clutch like it was a lifeline. Her dress was crimson, the kind of red that makes everything else in the frame go quiet, but her eyes weren't at the party. They were somewhere far away, searching, measuring, almost scared. When the driver pulled off too fast, her heel twisted on the edge of the pavement and she stumbled. Instinct moved faster than thought. I stepped forward, caught her by the elbow, and steadied her before she hit the ground. "You okay?" I asked, trying not to sound as worried as I felt. For a second, she just stared at me, breathing hard like she was waiting for me to recognize her. I didn't. She wasn't some movie star I'd seen from the background of a set. She looked more like a regular person who'd accidentally wandered onto a red carpet. Then she blinked, forced a small smile, and said, "Yeah, thank you, I'm just not used to this." Her voice had that soft, tired quality people get when they've been brave for too long. Most guests brushed past the staff like we were part of the furniture. But she held my gaze an extra heartbeat, and in that pause something fragile passed between us, two strangers quietly admitting I don't really belong here either. I stepped back, suddenly aware that I was still holding her arm. "Sorry," I muttered, letting go. "Welcome to the Blackstone, enjoy the night." It was the kind of line they trained us to say, polished and empty, but I tried to put some real warmth into it. She gave a little laugh, touched my sleeve as if to say thanks again, and then disappeared into the glittering crowd. Hours blurred together in a parade of taillights and tuxedos. I jogged back and forth from the valet stand to the underground garage, my dress shoes cutting into my heels, my mind drifting to hospital rooms and past due notices. Still, I kept joking with guests, opening doors with a smile, reminding myself that kindness doesn't cost extra, especially when you don't have much else to give. Somewhere near midnight, the air turned cooler, and the last wave of VIPs began to leave. That's when the black car arrived. Not one of the usual ones, a different model, tinted darker, engine too quiet, like it was trying not to be noticed. The manager rushed over, nervous energy practically buzzing off him. "Daniel," he hissed, straightening my jacket. "Important guest, boss orders, you open the door, you escort him personally to the car, you make it look like a scene from an action movie. You know, Keanu style." He tightened my black tie, the one the other valets had nicknamed the Keanu Reeves tie, and shoved me toward the hotel entrance. Inside, someone important was waiting, some investor or celebrity, I didn't catch the name. All I knew was that the car felt wrong. My stomach knotted, but I pushed the feeling down. Guys like me don't get to question expensive decisions. We just follow instructions. As I stepped into the lobby again, the music had mellowed and the crowd thinned. That was when I saw her, the woman in the red dress, standing by a marble pillar as if she'd been waiting for me. Her hair had fallen loose from where it had been pinned, and there was a smudge of mascara near her eye like she'd wiped away tears in a hurry. When our eyes met, she moved fast, crossing the space between us with a determination that didn't match her delicate heels. Before I could say anything, she reached up, fingers brushing my chest, and carefully adjusted my crooked tie like we were old lovers instead of strangers who'd shared a single awkward moment. Her perfume hit me first, jasmine and something darker, and then the tremor in her hands. Up close, I could see that she was scared, really scared, and trying to hide it behind a steady jaw. She leaned in, her lips almost brushing my ear, and in a voice so low it was almost breath, she whispered, "Don't get in the car." For a heartbeat, the whole hotel went silent in my head. No music, no clinking glasses, just those 4 words echoing through my chest like an alarm I couldn't shut off. I pulled back, searching her face, but before I could ask what she meant, why her eyes were suddenly shining with panic, and how she even knew about the car at the curb, she stepped away from me as if nothing had happened, like she'd just straightened my tie out of politeness. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my manager waving urgently, gesturing at the waiting vehicle, mouthing, "Now, Daniel." I stood frozen between them, one foot pointed toward duty, the other rooted to the spot by the stranger's warning, my pulse hammering as I realized I had to choose which voice to obey. I did what I'd always done when life yanked me in 2 directions at once. I tried to keep everybody happy and hoped it wouldn't break me. I gave the woman in red one last searching look, trying to read the warning in her eyes, but she'd already slipped back toward the edge of the crowd, half hidden behind a column of glass and flowers. My manager's voice cut through the music, sharp and desperate. "Daniel, now." I walked toward the entrance feeling like the floor had tilted a few degrees. Every step made her words ring louder in my head. "Don't get in the car," it was such a specific warning. Not "be careful," not "something bad is going to happen." "Don't get in the car." I told myself she was just nervous, maybe drunk, maybe dealing with her own problems and projecting them onto me. But the knot in my stomach wasn't buying any of those excuses. The VIP waiting for his ride turned out to be Victor Blackstone himself, the man whose name was on the hotel, the invitations, and probably half the city. Up close, he didn't look like a monster or a saint, just tired, a little overweight in a perfect tux. Deep lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind you get from squinting at numbers and contracts for 30 years. He checked his watch like time owed him an apology. "You the Keanu look-alike?" he asked without much interest. "So I've been told," I said, opening the door for him as he stepped out of the revolving entrance. "Your car is waiting, sir." My manager hovered behind us, whispering instructions like a nervous director. "Daniel will escort you. Walk ahead, open the back door, stand like security. Very movie star. Ready, gentlemen? Let's make it look expensive." We moved toward the curb together, billionaire and valet, side by side like we were in the same world. The black car sat there, sleek and silent, headlights washing the wet pavement in a cold white glow. At first glance, it looked like any other luxury sedan. But as we got closer, details began to jump out at me like wrong notes in a song I knew by heart. The company logo that should have been on the bumper was missing. The license plates were clean but slightly crooked, like they'd been switched in a hurry. And the tint on the back windows was darker than regulations allowed. I'd parked thousands of cars. My instincts were screaming. The driver stepped out to open the rear door. He wore a cap pulled low and sunglasses that made no sense at midnight. His posture wasn't relaxed the way professional chauffeurs usually are. He stood too straight, too ready, one hand staying near the inside of his jacket. "Mr. Blackstone," he said in a flat, almost bored tone. "We're on a schedule, traffic's building on the bridge." His accent was hard to place, not local. He didn't look at me at all, like I was invisible. Behind us, someone laughed too loudly. Glass clinked. The string quartet shifted into a slow waltz. It was the kind of background noise that lets bad decisions hide in plain sight. I forced myself to breathe and glanced back toward the lobby. The woman in the red dress stood just inside the glass doors, her hands pressed together so tightly her knuckles were white. Our eyes met for half a second. She shook her head once, almost imperceptibly. I swallowed. My job was to walk Victor Blackstone to that car, open the door, and smile. My real life, My sister's hospital bills, the rent, the bruised dignity that came with 3 side hustles was balanced on that paycheck. You don't argue with a billionaire's driver because your gut feels weird. You don't accuse a stranger's car of being wrong because a trembling woman whispered a warning you don't understand. People like me are trained, silently and thoroughly, to stay in our lane. But kindness is a strange thing. Once you start caring about people, even the ones who don't know your name, it becomes harder to walk them towards something that feels like danger. Half of courage is just refusing to pretend you didn't see what you saw. I stepped in front of Blackstone, one hand raised, trying to sound professional instead of terrified. "One moment, sir. I thought I heard something odd with the engine when it pulled up. Let me just check." "There's nothing wrong with the engine," the driver cut in, his jaw tightening. His eyes flicked to me, then away, like he was recalculating something. "We're late." My manager hissed my name under his breath, the way people do when they're smiling for rich guests and murdering you with their eyes at the same time. "Daniel, don't improvise, open the door." To Blackstone, he added with a strained chuckle, "He's an aspiring actor. Sometimes he forgets this isn't a set." Blackstone gave me a long, irritated look. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the way powerful people look at small stones in their shoe. "Son, I've been getting into cars longer than you've been alive," he said. "It's fine." And with that, he stepped around me toward the open door. Time slowed. Through the tint, I caught a different shape in the back seat, a shadow where no one was supposed to be. My eyes adjusted just enough to catch the faintest glint of metal, angled low near the opposite door. I'd spent enough hours on fake sets with fake guns to know the posture of someone waiting to lift a weapon. Except this wasn't rehearsed. This wasn't rubber. This was real. Every survival instinct I had screamed at once. I saw the woman in the red dress raise a hand to her mouth. I saw the driver's shoulders tighten. I saw Blackstone's fingers curl toward the door handle. In one blinding flash of certainty, I understood. The car wasn't here to take him home. It was here to make sure he never got there. "Sir, wait!" I shouted, lunging forward in the same heartbeat that the hidden figure's arm started to rise. Glass, chrome, human lives. Everything converged in that single motion as I threw myself toward Blackstone, not yet knowing whether I was about to save him, ruin everything, or die on a sidewalk for a man who didn't even know my last name. The first gunshot didn't sound like it did in the movies I'd worked on. It was flatter, meaner, like the air itself tore open. I hit Blackstone hard, driving my shoulder into his chest and knocking him sideways just as the window beside him exploded in a storm of glass. We went down together, my cheeks scraping the pavement, tiny shards biting into my skin. Someone screamed. Someone else yelled, "Gun!" and the world dissolved into chaos. I rolled instinctively, dragging Blackstone with me toward the concrete barrier that separated the valet lane from the street. Years of being thrown to the ground in low-budget fight scenes paid off in the single most terrifying second of my life. The stunt coordinator's voice flashed through my head. "Don't fight the fall. Roll with it." So I did, using my body to shield the billionaire while another round punched into the asphalt where his head had been. The driver shouted something in a language I couldn't catch. The shooter inside the car fired again, now blind and desperate, glass raining everywhere. Guests scattered, diamonds, gowns, tuxedos all dissolving into raw human panic. My manager dove behind a luggage cart, eyes huge with disbelief. The string quartet stopped mid-note, the last vibrating sound of a cello string hanging eerily in the air. Blackstone wheezed beneath me, more stunned than hurt. "What the hell?" "Stay down," I snapped, surprising both of us with the authority in my voice. My heart hammered so hard I could taste iron at the back of my throat, but I kept my body between him and the car. Fear is loud, but responsibility is louder. I hadn't chosen this, but I was in it now, and there was no version where I crawled away and left him exposed. Tires screeched. The car lurched forward, then jerked sideways as the driver tried to use the vehicle as a weapon. It clipped the edge of the barrier, metal grinding against concrete, sparks flying. I grabbed Blackstone by the collar and yanked him farther down the lane, fighting for every inch. A second black SUV roared around the corner, almost too perfectly timed, like someone had rehearsed this whole nightmare. It skidded to a halt, blocking the far end of the driveway, cutting off any escape to the main road. Security finally sprang into action, but half of them froze, unused to their jobs meaning anything more than breaking up drunk arguments. One guard pulled his gun, hands shaking, shouting for everyone to get inside. Another fumbled a radio. None of them were close enough to matter in the one place where everything was happening, right beside the fake chauffeur, the crippled sedan, and the two men on the ground. The driver abandoned his door and sprinted around the hood toward us, something black and heavy glinting in his hand. He wasn't running like a panicked employee. He was moving like someone who'd trained for this, steps measured, eyes clear. For a split second, I thought this is the part where the background extra dies first. Then another thought cut through it, sharp and stubborn. No, not today. I got to my feet, knees trembling, and stepped between the driver and Blackstone. I had zero combat training beyond play fighting on camera, but I'd spent a lifetime lifting luggage, pushing stalled cars, and carrying other people's burdens. Strength builds quietly while you're doing humble work. When he swung the gun toward me, I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed his wrist with both hands and slammed it down on the hood of a nearby car. Pain shot up my arms as the weapon cracked against metal. He cursed and drove his knee into my ribs, knocking the wind out of me. For a moment, white stars burst behind my eyes. Another instinct from stunt work kicked in. Keep your head moving. I ducked my chin as he swung again, his elbow glancing off my jaw instead of breaking it. We grappled, slipping on broken glass, two strangers locked in a clumsy, vicious dance under the hotel lights. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her, the woman in the red dress, running toward us instead of away. She looked impossibly fragile against the chaos, heels skidding, hair falling free, but there was nothing fragile in her face. She grabbed Blackstone by the arm, trying to drag him behind the concrete barrier. "Move!" she yelled at him, voice cracking. "Please move." The driver twisted, using my own momentum against me. He swung me around and slammed my back into a parked SUV. Pain shot down my spine. The gun slipped from his hand and clattered somewhere under a car. For one hopeful second, I thought I'd disarmed him until he pulled a small knife from his sleeve, quick and effortless. "You should have stayed in your place," he hissed. I barely dodged the first slash, feeling the rush of air as the blade cut through where my throat had been an instant before. This wasn't a stunt. There was no padded mat, no choreographer yelling, "Cut!" if I messed up. There was only fear, adrenaline, and the stubborn refusal to let a stranger die on my watch. I grabbed his forearm, the knife inches from my face, and shoved with everything I had left. My muscles burned, but somewhere under the exhaustion was a deeper fuel. The memory of my sister in a hospital bed, telling me I was braver than I believed. A horn blared. The SUV that had blocked the driveway suddenly lurched forward, rolling straight toward us. In the driver's seat, another masked man yelled something I couldn't hear. They weren't just trying to kill Blackstone anymore. They were trying to scoop us all up at once. The knife man saw the vehicle coming and changed tactics. He drove his shoulder into my chest, shoving me aside, then reached down, grabbed Blackstone by the collar, and hauled him upright with surprising strength. "Stop!" the woman in red cried, grabbing for Blackstone's other arm. For a heartbeat, all three of them formed a desperate, jagged triangle, billionaire, attacker, and the woman who had tried so hard to say something before all this happened. The SUV screeched to a halt beside them, side door already sliding open. Rough hands shot out from inside, seizing opportunities with brutal efficiency. In 3 seconds that felt like a lifetime, everything unraveled. One man yanked Blackstone into the SUV. Another grabbed the driver's shoulder and pulled him in after before he could finish me with the blade. A third pair of hands snatched the woman by the waist as she fought, kicking and clawing, her red dress flashing like a warning flare against the night. She managed to lock eyes with me as they dragged her toward the open door. There was terror there, yes, but also a fierce, almost pleading determination, like she needed me to understand something I still couldn't see. I stumbled forward, lungs burning, trying to reach them. "Let her go!" I shouted, grabbing at the sliding door just as it began to close. A fist crashed into the side of my head from inside the vehicle. Lights exploded behind my eyes. I refused to let go, fingers clawing at the frame, but another hit caught me in the ribs and a boot slammed into my hand. Pain shot through my fingers and I finally lost my grip, stumbling backward onto the pavement. The last thing I saw before the door slammed shut was her face inches away through the dark glass, palm pressed against it, mouthing 2 words I barely managed to read. "I'm sorry." Then the SUV roared past me, tires spitting gravel, dragging Victor Blackstone and the only person who'd seen this coming into the night. Security sirens wailed behind me. My manager shouted my name from somewhere far away. I tried to stand, but my legs folded under me. As the taillights disappeared around the corner, a sick, hollow realization settled in my chest. I hadn't just failed to keep a billionaire safe. I'd been the only one who listened to a frightened stranger, and still, somehow, I'd lost her too. The sirens didn't sound real at first. They were just another layer of noise over the ringing in my ears, the taste of blood in my mouth, and the image of red silk vanishing behind sliding metal. People were talking all around me, shouting, crying, praying, but my brain locked onto one thought and wouldn't let go. I lost her. Hands grabbed my shoulders, trying to make me sit still. A paramedic's face swam into view, sharp and too bright under the hotel lights. "Hey, stay with me. Can you hear me? Name." "Daniel," I heard myself say. "They took her, and Blackstone, dark SUV, no plates on the back, side door. There were 3, maybe 4 guys." The words came out broken, chasing each other, but I clung to them like rope. If I could just describe it clearly enough, maybe it wouldn't be too late. Someone pressed gauze to the cut on my cheek. Another light flashed in my eyes, checking my pupils. My manager hovered a few steps away, pale and shaking, looking between me and the smeared track of tire marks like he couldn't decide which disaster to focus on. Security officers talked into radios, tripping over each other. For all their black earpieces and sharp suits, none of them had stopped the car. Police arrived in a rush of blue and red. The hotel's beautiful facade turned into a crime scene in seconds. Yellow tape, cameras, officers ushering wealthy guests back inside. Blackstone's absence hung over everything like a storm cloud. You could feel it in the way people moved, careful and jittery, already calculating what this would cost them. They put me in the back of an ambulance to clean the cuts on my hands and check my ribs. Every time the paramedic asked if it hurt when I breathed, I wanted to tell her the pain in my chest had nothing to do with broken bones. I saw the woman's face over and over, the way she'd run toward danger, the way her eyes had begged me to understand something I still didn't, the apology on her lips as the door closed. She had warned me instead of saving herself. Courage looks different when you remember it comes from fear, not from the lack of it. A detective climbed into the ambulance with a small notebook and the tired patience of someone used to hearing bad stories. "Daniel, right?" he said. "I'm Detective Ramos. I need you to walk me through exactly what happened. Slowly." His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, weighing every word. I told him everything, from the moment the black car pulled up to the mismatched plates to the hidden figure in the back seat. I told him about the driver's strange behavior, about tackling Blackstone, about the fight, the SUV, the kidnapping. And then quietly I told him about her, the woman in the red dress, the way she'd stumbled earlier, the way she'd adjusted my tie and whispered, "Don't get in the car." He stopped writing. "She said that before the shots?" "Yeah," I said. Like she knew something was going to happen, like she was trying to keep me out of it. Ramos studied me in silence for a beat too long. "And you'd never seen her before tonight?" "Never," I said. She didn't act like she knew Blackstone either, more like she was watching, worried. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Hotel security says the cameras at the front entrance glitched right when that car pulled up. No footage of the vehicle arriving, no clear plate numbers. That's not luck. That's planning." So she was part of it. The words burned on the way out. The idea that the only person who tried to save me might have been part of the same crew made my stomach twist. "Could be," he snapped the notebook shut. "Or she could have been trying to stop it and got swept up with him. We won't know until we find them." He glanced out at the flashing lights. "You did good, you know. If you hadn't moved Blackstone, he'd probably be dead." The compliment bounced off the guilt sitting heavy in my chest. He's still gone. She's gone. That doesn't feel like good right now. Ramos's voice softened just a fraction. "Sometimes surviving the first part is the only win you get that night." He nodded toward the chaos outside. "Don't leave town, Daniel. We're going to need you." They kept me there for what felt like hours, asking the same questions in slightly different ways. My manager paced back and forth, trying to act supportive while also clearly wondering if I'd ruined his career. At one point, he pulled me aside. "You tackled him," he whispered. "Daniel, he's Victor Blackstone. You can't just—" "He'd be dead if I hadn't," I said, more sharply than I intended. For once, I didn't apologize for being right. Eventually, things thinned out. The photographers left. The guests were escorted home. The string quartet's instruments lay abandoned in a corner like they'd survived a war. A light rain started to fall, washing the last bits of glass from the pavement, smearing the blood into faint, meaningless streaks. Someone handed me my jacket. I slipped it on and started toward the staff exit, my body heavy with fatigue. That was when I saw it, a small silver shape lying near the pillar where she'd stood earlier. It had been kicked aside during the panic, almost hidden in the shadow of a planter. Her clutch. I crouched and picked it up, my fingers suddenly clumsy. The metal was cold and wet from the rain, the clasp bent like someone had stepped on it. For a second I just held it, feeling the weight of it in my palm. This was the last piece of her the night had left behind. My first instinct was to hand it to the nearest officer. Evidence, I told myself. Chain of custody. Do the right thing. But another thought pushed in. If she'd warned me, if she'd run toward the danger instead of away, maybe there was something in here she'd wanted someone to find. Someone who wasn't already compromised. I slipped the clutch inside my jacket before I could talk myself out of it. In the staff locker room, under a brutal fluorescent light, I finally opened it. Inside were the ordinary things any woman might carry. A phone with a cracked corner, a lipstick the same shade as her dress, a folded tissue with mascara on it. And then there was something else. A small, black USB drive taped to the inner lining with clear tape, carefully hidden where no one would see it unless they were looking very closely. Tucked beside it was a folded piece of paper, creased from being opened and closed many times. I peeled the tape, freed the drive, and unfolded the note with shaking hands. The handwriting was quick but neat. If you are reading this, something went wrong. Do not give this to Blackstone or his security. Send the files to this address. An email address and a name. Underneath, in smaller letters, she'd added 3 words that made my skin prickle. You can still help. I stared at the note, at the tiny flash drive resting in my palm, and understood that the night wasn't over. The kidnapping was only the visible crack. Whatever was on that drive was the fault line underneath, and somehow, a broke valet with a crooked tie and a bleeding lip had just been invited to step right onto it. I didn't sleep when I got home. I sat at our small kitchen table, the one with the wobbling leg, staring at the USB drive like it might explode if I blinked. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional cough from my sister's room. The world outside was already moving on, cars passing, a dog barking, someone laughing down the block. Somewhere out there, Victor Blackstone and the woman in the red dress were being moved from one hidden place to another, and I was here with a cheap laptop and a decision that felt way too big for my life. The light in the hallway flicked on. Daniel! Emma's voice was rough with sleep. She shuffled into the kitchen wrapped in a thin cardigan, IV port taped to her arm, hospital band still on her wrist from her treatment earlier that day. She took one look at my bruised face and froze. Oh my God, what happened? I forced a smile that didn't reach anywhere near my eyes. Work got complicated. She sat opposite me, gaze sweeping over the cut on my cheek, the swelling on my jaw, the way I was cradling my ribs. Complicated doesn't usually come with that many colors. Are you okay? I'm here, I said. It was the only honest answer I had. Her eyes dropped to the USB drive between us. What's that? A problem, I admitted. Then, because I was too tired to lie to the one person who'd never asked me to be anyone but myself, I told her everything. Not in the panicked way I had with the police, but slowly, carefully, letting the images reorder themselves in my mind. The car, the fight, the kidnapping, the woman's warning, the note. When I finished, Emma leaned back, rubbing her forehead. So let me get this straight, she said. You saved a billionaire's life, failed to stop him from being kidnapped, and now some mystery woman has basically handed you the plot of a spy movie and told you not to trust the people whose job is literally security. Yeah, I said. When you put it like that, it sounds insane. It is insane, she said, then her expression softened. But you did the right thing at the hotel, you moved, you tried, that matters, Danny. I looked at the drive. What if the right thing now is giving this to the police? Let them handle it. And what if the people who glitched those cameras have a friend picking through evidence lockers? She asked quietly. Her note wasn't vague. She specifically said not to give it to Blackstone or his security. Cops aren't his security, I argued, though even as I said it, I knew she was talking about more than uniforms. Power had a way of blurring lines. Emma reached across the table and took my hand. Her palm was small and cool, skin thinned by too many IVs. All my life, she said, you've jumped in front of things for other people, bullies in school, angry customers at your jobs, even me when I was too sick to stand up for myself. You've always believed that ordinary people can make a difference if they just don't look away. So don't look away now because you're scared. Being scared means you understand how big it is. It doesn't mean you're not the right person. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, surprising and unwelcome. What if I make it worse? What if they hurt her because I mess up? Emma squeezed my fingers. What if you're the only reason she has a chance? Silence settled between us, heavy and full. Finally, I sighed and opened my old laptop. The screen flickered to life, the fan whining like it was protesting being dragged into a conspiracy. I plugged in the USB drive, half expecting the laptop to burst into flames or trigger some alarm. Nothing happened. A single folder popped up on the screen, labeled with a date from 6 months ago. Here goes nothing, I muttered. Before I could click it, the email address from the note stared back at me from the table. I hesitated, then opened a blank message and typed. I found this drive, she's been taken. So has Blackstone. Who are you and can you be trusted? I attached a single innocuous file from the drive, a spreadsheet that looked like numbers and contracts, and hit send before I could overthink it. If this was a trap, better to spring it with something small. If it was real, then maybe I wasn't alone. The reply came faster than I expected. Less than 3 minutes later, my laptop pinged. New message. Subject, I was afraid of this. The body read, Daniel, if you have this, it means she trusted you and that everything we were trying to prevent has already started. My name is Lara. I'm an investigative reporter. I've been working with her for almost a year. Do not open any files while you're connected to your home internet. They'll be monitoring everything after tonight. Meet me in person. Diner on 7th and Oak. Back booth. 10 a.m. Come alone. Bring the drive. No signature. No phone number. Just a time, a place, and a warning that made my skin crawl. Emma read over my shoulder, brow furrowing. She knew your name, she said. I told the police my name, I answered. If they're tapped in, she could have heard it. Or, Emma said, she really is who she says she is, and that woman in red has been planning for this moment longer than you've been replaying it. Either way, go, but be careful. I slept for maybe an hour before dawn. My dreams kept looping back to the hotel entrance, only this time when she adjusted my tie and whispered, "Don't get in the car." I listened. In the dream, we both ran. In the dream, no one got taken. In the dream, the world stayed simple. The diner on 7th and Oak was the kind of place time forgot. Cracked red booths, sticky menus, coffee that smelled burnt but comforting. A bell over the door announced me as I walked in, and half a dozen tired faces glanced up and then away. In the back booth, a woman in her 30s with dark hair tied in a loose bun sat alone, a laptop closed in front of her, fingers wrapped around a mug she'd long since stopped drinking from. She looked up as I approached. Her eyes flicked to the bruise on my jaw, the cut on my cheek, the way I guarded my ribs. Something like recognition crossed her face, not of me, but of the kind of night that leaves those marks. "Daniel?" she asked. "Lara." I slid into the booth across from her, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "Most people would have handed that straight to the cops and gone home to forget." "I tried to forget," I said. "Didn't work." I studied her for a moment. No makeup, tired eyes, hands ink stained the way only people who still used pens seemed to get. "You said you've been working with her, the woman in the red dress. What's her name?" Lara hesitated, as if saying it out loud made something more real. "Elena," she said finally. "She used to work for Blackstone until she found out what he's been hiding." I leaned forward. "Hiding what?" Instead of answering, Lara took the drive from my hand, plugged it into her laptop. and typed a string of commands with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this 100 times in stranger places. Folders and file names flashed across the screen, line after line of cold, indifferent text, contracts, offshore accounts, internal memos. Lara opened one document, then another. With each click, the color drained a little more from her face. She turned the laptop so I could see a series of photos: factories, polluted rivers, children playing in the shadow of warning signs, hospital records from neighborhoods I recognized as not far from ours. One word kept repeating in my head as I read the headers, the chemical names, the dates. Blackstone Industries. My breath caught. These addresses, I said hoarsely. That's near where Dad used to work, near where Emma got sick. Lara looked up at me, eyes full of a grim, shared understanding. This isn't just about a rich man being taken for ransom, she said. It's about the people who have been paying the price for his decisions for years. Alina was trying to expose him. Tonight was supposed to be her last risk, not his. I stared at the screen, at the numbers and reports that suddenly felt personal and radioactive all at once. The billionaire I'd thrown myself in front of wasn't just some distant symbol of power anymore. His choices had seeped into my family's life like poison. A cold, steady anger settled under my ribs, pushing back against the fear. So saving him, I said slowly, might have saved the man responsible for half the pain in this city. Maybe, Lara said, or maybe you saved the one person who knows enough to finally answer for it all, if we can get him back before whoever took him decides he's more trouble than he's worth. She closed the laptop with a soft click. Either way, Daniel, you're in this now, and the people who planned tonight, they won't let you stay just a valet who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen, tired eyes, bruised jaw, tie still slightly crooked, and realized she was right. This wasn't just someone else's story anymore. Whatever lay on the other side of this choice, I was already crossing the line.